Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to introduce this third meeting of the cycle Workspaces in the post-COVID-19 era. As we were telling the first two meetings, we are trying to make kind of a tour around different aspects concerning how the offices could be rethought after what we experienced during the last months. The first meeting was 2 weeks ago, and it was, let's say, generated by the public administration, who asked us to find a new way of thinking about the offices in the public administration. Last week, we had the chance to share the opinion more according to an approach related with the furniture systems and to project manager from USM and from Vitra, the two big furniture companies, were explaining us how they are dealing with this situation. Today, I will make the presentation just in a while. And I just would like to anticipate that next week we will have two guests going around design and spatial strategy for workplaces from two big important offices in Milan, from DAGW and planning offices, and the other big offices from San Francisco, ONA. It will be a very interesting way of looking how from the two sides of the ocean, let's say, in America and in Europe, Milan especially, we are now trying to reinvent or apply some principle which were already maybe in use just before the COVID crisis, but through the COVID crisis they became so incredibly actual nowadays. The guest of today will have a more academical approach, let's say. The first guest is Sibylla Amstutz. She's an architect, professor at Luzern School of Engineering and Architecture, where she has been teaching since 2007, 2007. She teaches, researches, and publishes in the areas of living and working environment. Especially in this context, I would like to mention a study she led for the Confederation Administration, a study about offices, and it was quite an interesting job, interesting study. It was really going through many aspects with a large research and numbers concerning how the offices planning is very strongly influencing, if not affecting, our health and our way of working. So and I'm glad that she will be with us today. The other guest, and I'm glad to introduce her again, Michela Bassanelli. She's an architect too. She's teaching and researching at Politecnico in Milano, especially interior architecture and exhibition design, and she's a temporary professor of interior design at Politecnico. I would like to mention a work she just curated and was very recently published. The title is in Italian, so Covid Home, luoghi e modi dell'abitare dalla pandemia in poi. I would like to translate it somehow, places and wave of living from pandemic on, let's say. I'm sorry if the translation is not so precise. We were very strongly in the market last week, and it was interesting in order to say how the economical world is reacting to what we are experiencing now. I think that it's fundamental that the interest of how the world will be tomorrow doesn't come only of the movement of the markets, but there are very important instances and issues that are coming also from a wider way of seeing the whole situation. And I think that in the university, we have maybe a very, usually a wider way of looking at that phenomenon. And that's why I'm glad to introduce our two speakers. The first presentation will be the presentation of Sibylla Amstutz from Luzern. And I would like to give her the word right now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pietro. Yes, the title of my presentation, The Value of the Corporation. I think in times of Corona, the corporate office is increasingly questioned. And with my presentation, I would like to show what value the office can have in the future. The question of the value of the office does not only arise since Corona. Within the last 6 or 7 years, there is a constant change to more flexible or mobile work. Thanks to the digital tools, we are theoretically able to work everywhere we like. The consequence is, of course, that the boundaries to the corporate office are becoming less stronger, and we are like astronauts connected with cables to our corporate office. At the moment, we talk a lot about the home office, but there are different alternatives to the corporate office, such as remote offices, where you can work like in a train station or aeroplane station or aeroplane or train. And there are also co-working spaces as alternative workspaces. That's a competition to the office, or they stay in competition to the office. In this presentation, I would like to focus on the corporate office. That's the office from a real company, and that the office have to create the and the value that the office have to create that people would like to go to the office. First, I would like to show you some offices of the very, very big companies that are pushing the digitalization or have a business model that is very strongly connected to the digital information. First of all, Airbnb, new headquarter in Dublin since 2016, 400 new workplaces from Henang Peng Architects. This is an inside view. The inside shows a large central atrium with a wide staircase. The atmosphere is kind of an industrial look and feel. The second example, Apple Park, Cupertino, 2017, 12,000 workplaces, architect Norman Foster. I couldn't find a picture from inside. It's very close, this building. I think there are very few pictures which you can see the inside. Then I leave it out for this presentation. Next example, Amazon, the Sphere Seattle, 2018, meeting space for 800 people. And this is a view from inside this Sphere Seattle. Inside, it looks a bit like a jungle with bridges and platforms where people could meet. And some other example, Facebook Menlo Park. Menlo Park is a huge campus of Facebook with more than 10 or 15,000 people. And this is one of the new buildings with 2,800 workplaces. Architect Frank Gehry built it. And this is a view from inside. It is interesting to see how these large companies attach importance to the physical corporate office, and I wondered how they justify these enormous investments. First, Airbnb said to provoke the level of interaction and crosstalk. Apple said to allow different design teams like industrial designer and user interface designers to work closer together, to encourage employees to connect and collaborate outside of the traditional office environment. Amazon. And last but not least, to promote teamwork and to allow staff work to their full potential. The statements are very similar. It's all about teamwork and interaction. The finding is not really new. We have already stated in 2013 that in the future, the office will be less of a place where people work alone. Instead, the focus will be on teamwork and the creation of networks, as well as the formal and informal exchange on projects and encounter. I think that this tendency will be reinforced by the corona. Therefore, the office should support collaboration with corresponding rooms. Behind this lies in particular the idea to foster innovation and creativity of the company. I would like to show two examples of innovation methods that are becoming increasingly popular within companies. First, Scrum and Agile project work. Scrum is a framework for developing, delivering, and sustaining complex products in short time slots. Therefore, it needs a close and intensive collaboration between the team members. First, it was a framework for IT developer, but the method is more and more applied in other fields. The second, design thinking. I don't know if you know this. Design thinking is an iterative process that teams use to understand users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions to prototype and test. The two methods are quite different, but as you can see, both methods are strongly connected to a physical space and to pen and paper. This is about the room, but we have also trends and needs from the mobile flexible work is also associated with trends and needs. In one of my research projects, we asked different people how their work changed in the last few years and what positive and what negative aspects are connected to this change. The trends and needs on this slide are from this research project. We have on the left side a kind of trends with autonomy, self-management and self-exploitation. And the people needs some context, structure, leadership and estimation. But we have also the increasingly multitasking and mobility, and people would like to have more concentration, more encounter and interaction. But we have also physical passivity and movement is needed, and digital tools we have on the other side, analog tools as a need. It's very important to have a focus on people if you think about office. With the competition of the home office in mind, the companies should really think about how they can create an added value for their employees. It's kind of the office is a context creating place. It's not office at home, but more home at office. Or the second, the office supports the organization of work and self-management of the employees. Third, the physical environment supports creativity and innovation with different spaces and rooms for formal and informal interactions. And very important, people are part of the office and can appropriate the spaces and rooms. The best experience I made is to create an attractive office is in cooperation with the employees. I would like to encourage the companies to participate their employees in the planning of the workspace. In this example, I would like to end my presentation with some pictures from a workshop with employees of a larger company. The topic was to develop a work setting for the development teams working with the Scrum method I shown few slides before. First, the teams developed different ideas and possible solutions for the best collaboration in their teams. Second, they built some one-to-one prototypes and tested them at the workshop. And finally, the company implemented the new work settings that the employees had developed. The approach of this company shows a great appreciation of its employees, and I believe that this office will continue to maintain its importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sibylla Amstutz. I'm so impressed also by this cooperative job you did with this company. Maybe now we are going on the other side of this way of reorganizing the work. We are entering more in the houses because the presentation of Michela Bassanelli will be centered more on the home spaces and the domestic spaces. How do they deal with the presence of this workspace inside our house? Please, Michela Bassanelli.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. And I would like to start this first part of my presentation from a tool on the desk object as a symbol or a metaphor of the transformation of work, both in spatial and cultural terms, to understand how COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to rethink the space of work, and in particular during the quarantine, the space of the home. The desk has long been the most binding and controversial symbol of office work, a two-faced piece of furniture to govern the confusion of papers and also set the class of employees. Over the centuries, its design has been instrumental to an underlying enchantment. Despite its limited size, the desk identifies the habitat and also the time of the work. In this image, you can see a work by the artist Daniel Spurry that rigorously map the outline of the objects on top of his table of every day. He assigned a number to each of the 80 items and wrote a plain, mock encyclopedic description, tracing memories or association it provoked. For most throughout history, however, the desk has not promised a comforting intellectual sanctuary or provoked a reflexive piece of art, but is the altar at which hours are offered in return for a salary. At the turn of the century, American workers migrated from factories into office-based administrative works. Desks arranged in tight rows characterize the Taylorist landscape of work, starkly reminiscent of the production line. This is an image of the Larkin building from the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. But at the beginning of 1960, a more democratic idea of the workplace crossed the world of the service sector, based on collaboration and the exchange of ideas between working groups that supported the movement of documents between one team and another. With this office landscaping, the office environment is characterized by groups of workstations grouped together like islands in the large open space, with sound-absorbing screen and also many plants. Office landscapes is focusing on the active participation of employee in decision-making processes and to ensure this type of work, but at the same time provide a certain privacy to the employee. An important example was offered by the designer Robert Prof with this system, the Action Office 2 system, produced by Herman Miller in 1968. By means of screens at different height, the vertical space used to implement shelves and small containers. Moreover, the panels can be composed in the room according to different possibility of closing the workstation, while the desk can be hired to work also standing. And the desk became a room. The sense of place was one of ubiquity, and the cubicle was born. But from Italy, the Italian designer Superstudio in 1960 strode out of their studio carrying their desk and settled them in the middle of a garden. For Superstudio, taking the desk outside was a purposeful act. By removing the desk from its conventional environment, it becomes stripped of its normal association. And this action opens the way and anticipates the change in the work process. In the contemporary era, work processes tend increasingly into dematerialization, and the table seems to accompany this phenomenology with glass tops or elements so tiny as to make it almost evanescent. With the computer comes the alleviation of the desk from its physical appurtenances. With smart working, the individual workstation is not the prerogative of a single person, but is rotating. Besides, the fact that the general trend is to reduce the number of desks in offices. You can work anywhere, at home, in a bar, in airport lounges, and what you really need is just a computer tool to keep on your lap or in your hands and a good Wi-Fi connection. The laptop comes close to rendering the desk obsolete. While we are compelled to work from home during COVID pandemic, sharing surfaces in small apartments or negotiating tables with children, the portability of our writing and work means that most surfaces can take on a deskness. A study by the Observatory of the Politecnico di Milano demonstrates that for Italy, it has gone from 570 smart workers in the past October, to 8 million home workers in the first period of quarantine at home against the spread of coronavirus. If home working, thanks to technologies that allow you to be connected from home, as provide an effective response to an emergency condition, it also created some difficulties. After years in which the house had been little lived in, especially by also young people in favor of public spaces or cultural places, now everything happened into the home, and the entire family is forced to live together every day. And although this is a temporary situation, it's also true that in future home working will inevitably become more and more widespread. There are some images of this period of quarantine. It's interesting to note that the idea of having an office space inside a private home predates the Victorians. Aristocrats, for example, and plantation owners typically had some version of a home office. Large houses often had a separate, small, private and easily heated room called a cabinet, which served more exclusively and as an office for correspondence or other kind of desk work. And for a long time, most offices were in fact home offices. Business owner often live above the shop and had a dedicated workspace for performing the administrative task. We tend to think of a home office as a dedicated room. That's not necessarily the case. In Victorian time, a secretary, that is the name of this piece of furniture, could be placed in a parlor, or a writing desk could be situated in a bedroom. And of course, there's also the kitchen desk. In these cases, the office component has more to do with the furniture than the actual room itself. And today, as homebound workers search for a place to do their job, the addition of on a desk or laptop stand can transform a room or part of a room into an home office. But on the other hand, as many employees sent home by coronavirus have discovered, the flexibility that the latest telework technology offers also come with new problems, especially when it comes to the new ubiquitous video calls and meetings that comprise large portion of many work days. Post-COVID, home offices and workspaces will be designed to stress lighting and acoustics essentially. We'll be working probably in soundproofed video conferencing studio. A significant role has been played in the past month by this background suitable for video conferencing too. In an article published in New York Times in March, we can find some advertisement about this. The idea to go neutral, keep it as simple as possible. You don't want a staircase behind you where people are going up and down, or too long a vista. It's important not to see multiple rooms in the shot because it is distressing. And also, IKEA will show a very short video, as in fact launched at the beginning of March a series of free backgrounds with which to customize video conference on Zoom and Microsoft Teams. suitable for any situation. There is one for the office with a professional space, and those for more relaxed occasion. It's a very strange idea of an interior inside another interior. It's provocative in relation to the topic of virtual. It's a real interior and the virtual interior. I will show you this short video.
A new window connects us. Let's make the most of it. We present Backgrounds by IKEA. A collection of downloadable backgrounds for your video calls, birthday decorations, places to celebrate with your friends, romantic dates, or dreamed places. Download yours and use them in your favorite video call program. Because it's time to connect and become inspired. Backgrounds by IKEA.
Okay, we go back on the presentation. Okay, and I saw it's a provocation, no, in relation to this topic of the virtual, which is the real space in which we live or work, and some idea for the future. Just to conclude in relation about this topic of the house of home working, and probably the idea it's important to rethink the home with this space, even small, dedicated to work, as I can show previously, not a room, but also a small work desk for this kind of activity. Consider also neutral places such as corridors or shared space of the house, where the mind can change horizon and make some stops during these sessions of work at home. And also the importance of furniture with an idea of flexibility and mobility. But I think that the house will be only a part of a complex and diffuse system of the work. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Michela. I was so interested by what you presented. I was asking myself if you have to pay in order to have this background from IKEA, or if it's for free.
Also, my background is not so good, but
yeah. Well, it's quite interesting for me that we compared this vision of the corporate office one side, and how our houses are dealing with the presence of a working activity inside it, and what it's. In my opinion, when we speak about not working in the office, or not working only in the office, because the office is made in order to meet people, but some other work can be made in a remote way, maybe. Well, we have to understand or ask ourselves where this remote place is. Maybe it's our house. And when we start speaking about how our houses is going to be organized in order to host this working activity, we sometimes, I have this feeling, forget that the house hosts mainly the fact that we are living in it. And so maybe our domestic life somehow has to face some changes and deal with the presence of these strange objects inside it. We see that it's not new, thanks to what Michela Bassanelli showed us just now. But there is one thing, that due to this wide and capillary diffusion of networking technologies, the boundary between working and private life is becoming more and more fragile, let's say. This concerns both time and space. You can chat with your friend from your office, here I could do that, during normal work. And at the same times, on Sunday, maybe I'm working with my family in a park, and I could answer an email that a colleague sent to me, and okay. Which means that the space and the time dedicated to the work and to the, let's say, family or the private life are really overlapping, at least. This brings us somehow to the pre-industrial era, which introduced quite clearly the separation between these two domains. The examples taken by the Larkin building was a quite clear example. Well, how this phenomenon is affecting, okay, the office space, so how this presence of private life is affecting the office, and how this phenomenon is affecting the domestic space. And I would like to maybe ask you if, or how is it affecting our domestic life more maybe than the domestic space? I don't know if Michela, you want to start, or Sibylla, you want to start? I should ask. Michela, you start.
Okay.
Seems to be ready.
Yeah, no, and we can say that our life has changed, I think, in past month from a function linked to time, yes, certainly also with to space, but I think that the great fracture has been on the axis of time, and the digital that is eating our physical person has passed also to attack our physical space. The digital, I think, is eating my house, your house, probably the whole city. And this phenomena, these dynamics will also have probably evident effects on the architecture and also on the interior design. For domestic space, I already indicated some, I don't know, possibility of kind of transformation or relation with these two parts. For the office, this idea that I see in some journal that is sort of diffused office. No longer a centralized work environment, but a network that includes those who stay at the headquarters, those who operate from home, those who connect from other spaces made available by co-working facilities. I think that this idea is to think to a network system composed by different spaces, different parts of this global system, in my opinion. And probably, yes, the digital and the virtual, as we can see, it will be difficult also to separate the reality and the virtual. I don't know, in our life, probably.
Maybe before, thank you so much. Maybe before giving the word to Sibylla, I would like to attach to somebody who came out during last week's presentation, which is this vision according to which it's probably, our colleague from USM, from Vitra, they were very skeptical about the possibility of really organize the work from home. So maybe it's interesting to understand from Sibylla, she think that this is really the way we are taking, or is just a kind of a very time framed phenomenon which is affecting our life in nowadays, but in the future maybe is going to be another way or not, and how this private life is going to take place in an office.
I think the private life in the office is visible with the sofas and the domestic furniture in the office. It's this is yes, and vice versa. In the home we have the office chair now, and I don't know if it's quite a good direction. I think first of all, we should speak all about how people can deal with the lack of boundaries, and not first of the rooms. But there in the literature, there are two different strategies how to deal with the situation. The people, the integration and the segmentation. And integration, I think it's clear. We integrate all together. And the segmentation means that spatial and temporal separation of work and private life. And there is no right or wrong. But for example, I know several people, young people, also architects, that they are very good in the strategy of segmentation, and they don't want the office at home, and they don't want the home in the office. In my generation as architect, I was more a type of integration. I worked day and night and weekend and all day. Now I work the whole weekend at home for the school. That's no problem. But younger people, I see a lot of younger people, also students, they can really separate between these stages. And I think probably we have more in the future, more office and more home again, and quite a bit separation. And probably there are third spaces we can exchange and work. I don't know. I think it depends on the people and how the physical space can react of their different needs.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking now the office of Alvar Aalto, this home and office in Helsinki, which was really crowded by the workers at the very beginning. Then he had to build a new one. But it's true that this full overlapping of, and when they were too much, they were also working in the kitchen all together. And I think they did very nice things. Okay. And no, what was surprising too about this, that we saw IKEA selling background for teleconferences. You know, there are companies like, we saw Airbnb, for example, was one of the projects that Sibylla presented. But there are companies that they are now selling like places like Airbnb or something, but in the middle of the nature. So maybe in a little Volkswagen van or something like that, but
in the
perfectly equipped in order to work in remote mode. So you can be, I don't know, in Finland or I don't know where, the Maghreb. From there, it's like to be in the very center of Milan or Zurich or London, and you have the perfect connection with everybody, but you're free and so on. So it's really interesting how the house is getting, with this background. And at the same time, physically, you can be in the office in the middle of nowhere. So it's, we will speak about identity maybe later, but okay. But this brings us to one question, which is that this conception of the work and this coexisting of working and private life is also affecting very strongly our way of life in general. It's not just a question of working. It's really a big change in our life. And I was wondering also, because our society is also concerned by other questions, how all these changes are, in your opinion, affecting the gender question in the future. Until now, or in many countries, the role of men and women has not always been exactly the same. I think that it's very often quite different still in lots of places around the world. And how it is going to affect the offices, in your opinion? Sibylla, you want to start?
It's a difficult question. Yeah. Yes, and I know little about it. Also, I have been working in different offices for a long time. What I know is that the standards for office furniture are more tailored to men than to women. But I have not found many serious studies on this. However, I could imagine that women have different needs, for example, because of their size or so. But the important thing is to create really an environment to apply to both genders. Therefore, rooms and workplaces should be designed differently, not only one kind of workplace. It's better to have different kind of workplaces, satisfying the different needs and allowing people to work where it suits best. It's kind of a bond of flowers, and you can choose what you need at this moment. And this, I think, it's not so a question about gender. It's more a question about diversity, that we see that we are all different people with different cultures, religions, and gender. Okay, but to have the diversity aspect in mind, and this is, we have this in our research project, is a very important part to have the diversity in mind, because people are younger, older, have more need for light, or that the people are in the center of the planning. But about gender and how this could be change the office, it's a difficult question.
Yes, also for this, I think in a more complex way, I don't know, it's a fact that the difficulty for women, I think in particular during quarantine, to reconcile home work and in particular with the smart working, because hours ends up flowing into each other, and since the family care is mostly left to women, they give those particularly oppressed by this kind of typology of work. But I think that the big problem of the quarantine that in which emerged this difference between men and women was also related to the closure of the schools. I think the big problem, maybe we have to rethink school spaces and office also. We can think to integrate the, I don't know, common spaces in houses, in small neighborhoods, and something like that, because I think that smart working for women is also a positive way of work, and not only negative. It's a combination of multiple facts.
But and then it's incredible how these smart working solutions are not only women appreciated the possibility to deal a little bit better between the domestic demand and the working demand, because in our society, okay, in Switzerland, maybe you don't know Michela Bassanelli, but we just voted that even father can have 2 weeks for the paternity. It's quite new. It's like last week. This was a referendum. We make a lot of referendum around here. Okay. But yes, it's true that the role inside the families is also for let's say historical. I don't know, but
yes, probably is more related to Italy. I don't know. It's a cultural also way of living.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there is another thing which is interesting in what you presented. Maybe somehow, Sibylla, you already answered this question, so maybe we start with Michela Bassanelli concerning the identity, which is a very crucial question concerning the relationship between the firm and the worker. On the one hand, workers have the right, and I hope the ambition sometimes, if not the right, to fulfill themselves as individuals and reach personal achievements. On the other hand, there is the interest of the company its identity, under which the activity of the worker has to be somehow understood. Within these terms, we situate the sense of belonging, which is supposed to orientate the ambition of the employee and the goals of the firms towards the same direction, hopefully. In this regard, the building itself and the working space are usually a very important identity tool, as you showed us, Sibylla. So maybe I would like to understand also from Michela, how can we react in the future in the office space as such disappears or just steps back to be substituted with our houses or a widespread network crossing our cities?
Yeah. In the imaging shown by Sibylla before, we saw very well this idea of identity related also to this very important building. But the pandemic has shown that while activities concentrated in traditional offices can be carried out remotely and integrated with other function of living, in turn the work environments could be understood as clubhouses with small workstation and spaces of different size for conferencing, brainstorming, and so on, accessible also to house in mixed-use buildings where collective spaces will have to be provided as an extension to the domestic unit, for example. And I think that a challenge for this new identity, I don't know, for a corporate office, will be also the reuse of existing building that could become this new widespread hub. And I think also solution concerning interior design, but I think that we have to rethink the idea of the city and also this idea of the existing building, not new, but create a different vision and new strategies for create a different idea of identity. I think this.
Yeah. Sibylla, what do you think about
Yes.
your part? You already answered it, so maybe I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the company and with the culture of the company and the support the people get from the company. And I think the design of the office is only the visual key of the company's identity, but that doesn't mean that the people feel identity with the company. I think that's are separated things. I don't think that the corporate office will disappear so soon. I think it will not overcrowded, but the people work there because they have a need to work together on the same thing for the company. And I think this is one of the points to give a place where people can work together and innovate and create together, and to support the teams. And connected to this, we can speak about new identity of companies, even if they give or are they kind of harbors, and people can come and get some support, and by allowing them to participate, to be part of the company. And I think it's stronger connections to a company than the building itself. Of course, it's quite not. I'm an architect and interior architect, but I think the building itself cannot give the identity if the boss is not so nice. Then it's not the building alone.
No, of course.
Yeah, it have to play together all.
Yeah, I think yes, of course. But I mean, the examples you brought, the 4 main examples, Apple, Facebook, Airbnb, and
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. They are, of course, buildings which are absolutely, completely meaningful and significant. I mean, they are very iconic buildings, and I think that we can also think at Google in Zurich or all over the world how the interiors are really a way of building an identity. I don't know if they really do that, but I think that the conception of the building. And then, of course, there is the normality of the offices, and maybe not all offices around the world look like the ones you showed us, which are maybe, I don't know, some spots, some exception. But it's interesting, so anyhow, it's kind of a contradiction, because from one side, during the coronavirus, a lot of people experienced this remote working way. At the beginning, it was absolutely, I don't know, a real thing which was happening, although until the day before it was just a word, and then we discovered, and many people discovered, that okay, we can also work from home, and we tried really doing it, but okay, that's what happened. And improvising a little bit too in the companies and the people themselves. There is this big study that was led by Malakoff Humanis, this big French company, who was monitoring the remote working has been monitoring the remote working since years. And so they had the occasion to face the result of this year with the previous years. And it seems that this year the people was extremely happy about this new situation. Not only the employees, who really appreciated it, but also the companies. Many bosses were kind of afraid of losing controls on productivity, and the employees had to realize that in the end, there was a global increasing of the efficiency, which is normally what the bosses are expecting from the worker, and so on. So in the end, it seems that from the two sides, people could be pushing around the idea of abandoning, let's say, or stepping back from offices. At the same time, we are very scared and worried about the question of the creativity. I mean, there are a lot of work that we can do. It needs to be made all together in the same space, and the very direct human exchange is extremely efficient and productive in terms of ideas, which is also good for the companies themselves and something that they need. On the other hand, we know that with this very strong application of algorithm in the economy, in the society, in the work, the human work is put under question. So what we usually do, let's say, stupid works, I also do stupid works, but can be made by a machine. So I have to be in a context which allows me to make creative jobs, which seems to need a real place from the company. How do you think the companies are dealing in the future with this, let's say, contradiction or yeah?
Shall I?
Yeah.
I think home office is really, it was a good experience, this lockdown, to experience with home office and how it works. For most people, it works very good. For other people, it's not the best version with kids and all so on. And I think we will find a good balance between home office and work in the corporate office. At the moment, the companies are they have a very strong idea to overview the employees. And I think with the lockdown, it was a little bit easier all. I can think that's important to have the people together, that the team is meeting each other and they can exchange. And we said always the informal meeting, if you punch into each other in the corridor, in the cafeteria, then it's very, very important. This is very important for a company or for our school, I think, for my job. And if the people work remote at home, I think they feel very well. But for my team, it's better to have, I think, 1 or 2 days in the week that the team should be more physical present in the office. And but we said that we make things that we can make at home, then it's okay, it's fine. But we need some exchange and to bring our research group further and new ideas to brainstorm. Then it's better to have the people physically here.
I agree with Sibylla. I think that this remote working, home working will be a solution also for the future, but it will not be the absolute solution. The very challenge will be to be able to integrate it with other collective and social forms that are the basis of creativity, also for work like our works architect and so on. And because the biggest risk of exclusive smart working will be the loss of environmental and also cultural confrontation. And we can stay very careful about this.
Yeah, I must say I totally agree, and we were also thinking about, as a conclusion, maybe that, okay, maybe it was okay for 2 months, 3 months, we experienced it was fine. Maybe we can do it for 1 year, it could be okay. Yeah. But it's very hard to imagine, I think, for everybody to do that for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, it would be a nightmare, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I wanted to close it with a little bit. Okay, some ironical stuff, but it's not so ironical. Thank you so much, Michela Bassanelli from Politecnico of Milan and Sibylla Amstutz from the University in Luzern, for your contribution and your presentation. I hope that we will have the occasion to exchange in the future again some reflection concerning offices and interior spaces. Thank you so much to everybody who followed us. I remind everybody that next week there will be the last meeting called Design and Spatial Strategy for Workplaces. Our guest will be Alessandro Adamo, Director of DAGW in Milan, and Premier Pia, co-founder and principal at Studio O&A in San Francisco. Okay, it will be our last meeting. It will concern how big companies are planning and designing offices today and maybe tomorrow. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.